Each morning arrived like clockwork, cloaked in frost and routine. He stepped out from the narrow path between crumbling brick buildings at precisely 6:08 a.m., as if summoned by the cold air itself. The bus stop sign bore the rust of years ignored, its paint chipped and dull, but he stood beneath it with the same posture every day, upright, still, eyes forward. His coat was long, woolen, and olive-colored, brushing gently against his knees with each breath of wind. It held the kind of creases that spoke of long walks and heavy memories. His shoes, though worn at the edges, retained a glossy shine that seemed to defy the filth of the cracked sidewalk beneath him. His presence was an anomaly in a street otherwise resigned to decay. When the bus pulled up at 6:12, the driver, Malik, barely needed to open the doors. The old man was already stepping forward, his gait deliberate, his expression unreadable. He paid with coins, always the exact amount, placed in the tray with mechanical precision. Never a glance, never a word. Then, without pause, he moved to the third row on the left, sat by the window, and turned his gaze outward. Over time, Malik noticed patterns. The man blinked infrequently. He rarely adjusted his posture. The seat he chose had a window that was always partially fogged at the corners. It never deterred him. Rain or snow, he followed the same route, at the same time, seated in the same position. No phone, no book, no earbuds, only stillness. The city passed in layers outside that window. Overpasses scabbed with graffiti, buildings wrapped in scaffolding like old wounds being stitched, children with two large backpacks trudging past chain-link fences. But the old man never reacted, never followed any of it with his eyes. He seemed to be watching something beyond the physical. He exited 15 stops later, near the industrial fringe where the city gave up its ambition. Warehouses slumped against each other like tired boxers, their signs faded to a whisper. There, he disappeared behind a chain-link gate that creaked with resignation, slipping into an alley that never appeared on Malik's route map. Malik found himself looking forward to the old man's presence. It became part of his own routine, a quiet constant in a loud, shifting world. There was something sacred in the rhythm, something reassuring in knowing that not all things needed to explain themselves. But then came the day the rhythm faltered. It was a Tuesday. The bus rolled into the stop at 6:12, just as always, but the space beneath the rusted sign was empty. Malik hesitated, foot hovering over the brake. There was a strange tightness in his chest, disproportionate to the situation, but real. The old man was gone. He glanced in the mirror. The city yawned behind him. Cars idled. A boy on a scooter swerved between potholes. Life continued. But the seat in the third row remained vacant, and Malik's hands trembled slightly on the wheel. The following morning, the old man returned, but not unchanged. A tear marked his sleeve near the wrist, jagged and dark against the coat's olive fabric. His hand bore dried blood at the knuckles, skin cracked like old parchment. Malik watched him more carefully now, noting the slight strain in his movement, the way he favored his left side. That was the morning Malik began to question the routine, to wonder what story lived behind the silence. He thought of the alley, the warehouses, the man's shoes, his coat, the unseen weight that accompanied him like a shadow stitched to the soles of his feet. The city offered no answers, only repetition, but Malik had never been content with surface-level truths. Raised by a father who served overseas and a mother who documented forgotten lives through photography, he had learned to notice what others missed. The details, the aberrations. That Thursday, after ending his route, Malik didn't go home. Instead, he circled back, parked 2 blocks from the man's drop-off point, and waited. The wind carried the smell of rust and oil. A cat limped past a dumpster. A solitary light blinked in the upper window of a warehouse long abandoned by industry. Time dragged. Then, at 7:02, the man appeared. He moved with purpose, unhurried but not aimless, following a path between stacked crates and bent fencing. Malik followed at a distance, heart drumming with the thrill and guilt of intrusion. The man stopped before a steel door embedded in a brick wall. It bore no markings, no handle, only a small keypad that lit beneath his hand. The door opened soundlessly. He stepped inside. It closed behind him like the ceiling of a tomb. Malik stood frozen. The silence pressed in around him like fog. The building offered no hints, no hum, no movement, no light from within. Only the faint smell of burnt rubber and old wood. He didn't approach. Not yet. Instead, he turned and walked away, the echo of his own footsteps chasing him down the empty street. Something had changed, and the routine, once sacred, now felt like a cipher begging to be broken. That night, Malik sat at his kitchen table long after the streetlights came on, tracing the route with his finger on an old city map. The neighborhood where the man vanished was barely labeled, a smear of numbered blocks and dead ends. He wondered how many others passed through that alley unnoticed, how many lives unfolded in secret just beyond the edges of his awareness. Sleep came reluctantly. His dreams were fragmented, flickering images of fog, steel doors, footsteps in echo chambers. He awoke before the alarm, the sky outside still navy, the silence louder than it should have been. The bus would run its route, the same as always, but something beneath it, beneath him, had shifted. And though no words had been exchanged, he felt the weight of a message passed from one routine to another. A call embedded in silence. A mystery inhaled with every breath of morning frost. The bus routes continued, but Malik's world had subtly shifted. Each stop sign now seemed like a marker in a larger, invisible code. As he turned corners or waited at red lights, he felt less like a driver and more like a piece in a quiet game that others didn't know was being played. The day after he saw the man disappear behind the steel door, Malik couldn't focus. Passengers came and went in a blur. He no longer watched for fare dodgers or scanned the rearview mirror for trouble. His thoughts circled back to the keypad, to the building, to the way the man had moved, confident, certain, as if unlocking a memory rather than a lock. That evening, after completing his final shift, Malik returned to the alley. He parked further away this time, careful not to be seen. The air was heavier than usual, laced with oil, damp concrete, and something else, metallic, unfamiliar. He approached the wall again. The door was closed. Nothing gave away its presence, but a faint scuff on the sidewalk, like footsteps repeatedly pressed into stone. He didn't try the keypad. He didn't need to. He wasn't ready. Instead, he walked the perimeter, taking in the warehouse's shape from all angles. Cracks along the foundation suggested age, but the security cameras perched on the corners were newer than anything else on the block. He noted details now: a small antenna on the roof, ventilation patterns, boot prints near a side door that had no handle. Everything told him this wasn't an abandoned building. It was active. It was watching. Back home, Malik took out a faded map of the city. It had been pinned on his wall since college, used more for aesthetic than function, but now he saw it differently. He marked the alley. Then he marked his bus route. Then the exact spot where the man always got off. A triangular pattern began to form. He leaned closer. The distances weren't random. They were almost equal. The thought haunted him through the night. In dreams, he saw threads linking locations across the map, red lines drawn by unseen hands. Each morning bus stop, each faded street sign, now part of something larger. 2 days later, he drove past the alley again. This time, a van was parked outside. It was matte black, unmarked, idling quietly. Malik slowed, just enough to glimpse a silhouette in the driver's seat. No movement, no eye contact, just presence. It didn't belong there, and that was the point. He felt the pressure of observation. Someone knew he had been there. Someone had seen. Later that day, Malik took a different route home. He drove aimlessly through back roads, trying to shake the sensation of being followed. Eventually, he parked at a quiet overlook above the river where freight trains passed below. The cold air helped clear his mind. He thought again of the old man. That steadiness, that limp, the military coat, the way he seemed not just to exist within the city, but above it, beyond it. Malik began to write in a notebook. Just observations at first. Times, locations, descriptions. But then questions emerged. What was behind the steel door? Who were the others? What had the old man returned to after vanishing that one day? Why had he come back bloodied? And what did that mean? The next morning, Malik checked the stop at 6:12 again. Empty. 2 more days passed. Still nothing. Then, on the 3rd day, he saw something new. A different man boarded his bus. Younger, athletic, early 30s. He paid an exact change, nodded once, and took the same seat. The third row, left side, by the window. He too stared out, unmoving. Malik's pulse quickened. It wasn't just the seat. It was the stillness, the absence of distraction, the deliberate silence. When the new man exited, it was at the same location as before. He turned left at the alley, then vanished. This wasn't coincidence. It was relay. That night, Malik didn't go home. Instead, he returned to the alley under the cover of dusk. The van was gone. The street was quiet. He approached the door and, for the first time, placed his hand near the keypad. He didn't enter a code. He just stood there, listening, feeling. A low hum buzzed beneath his feet. Machinery. Life. He walked away. But this time, as he rounded the corner, something new caught his eye. A symbol sprayed in faded red paint on the side of the adjacent building. A triangle intersected by a vertical line. He photographed it, studied it. It wasn't gang tagging. It was too precise, too intentional. It looked like something architectural or militaristic. Back home, he searched everything he could. Symbols, codes, covert networks, urban legends. Most led nowhere. But one image, a scan from a declassified Cold War training manual, stood out. The same triangle and line, used to mark safe houses during extraction missions. The implications unraveled him. The building was a safe house. The old man was not just a veteran. He was still active, operating, recruiting. He returned to the notebook. Now, it was not just questions. It was structure, a network, a system of movement that mimicked randomness, but held purpose beneath. If he continued watching, he might learn the pattern. But what then? He closed the book slowly. At 3:17 a.m., he stood at his window and looked out over the sleeping city. Headlights moved like fireflies down distant highways. People slept in homes unaware of the stories playing out beneath them. Some buildings looked empty but breathed secrets between bricks. He knew now the city was layered, and he was no longer on the surface. The days grew quieter, not in sound, but in the weight of what Malik noticed. The city hadn't changed, but he had. He no longer saw streets, he saw signals. Every alley, light pole, manhole cover felt placed with intent. The world now looked like a map turned inside out. His dreams reflected it. Nights were heavy with half-formed corridors, elevators descending endlessly, footsteps that belonged to no one. He would wake up sweating, heart thudding as if he'd run through layers of concrete thought. Yet despite the unease, he never wished to return to ignorance. He started photographing things. Rusted doors with mismatched screws. Traffic signs with stickers peeled in a perfect square. Drain covers marked with strange grooves. At first they meant nothing, just curiosities. But over time, patterns emerged. Certain lines repeated. Certain geometries recurred. The city was whispering, not loudly, not in words, but in symbols. One morning before his shift, he followed a delivery truck that turned where it shouldn't. It wound through a part of town that didn't appear on GPS. No signage, no street names. Yet cameras were mounted neatly on each corner, blinking red against crumbling brick. The truck stopped at a building with no doors, just a service elevator embedded into the ground. A man emerged, tall, gray-jacketed, carrying nothing. Malik turned away before the man looked up. Even at a distance, his presence buzzed. Later that day, he traced routes that didn't connect on the map, but always crossed in reality. He discovered buildings that were identical down to the mold growth on their corners. Even the birds seemed to follow repeatable loops in the sky. There were cycles inside cycles, and Malik began to write it all down like scripture. That night, he returned to the original building, the one with the keypad and the red symbol. It looked unchanged, but Malik felt different. The boundary between observer and participant had blurred. He walked past the keypad again, pausing briefly, then turned toward a nearby stairwell leading to a parking garage. From there, he found a vantage point. He waited. At 1:43 a.m., someone exited the building. The figure moved quickly, dressed in what looked like a worker's uniform. Reflective strips, gloves, a hard hat. But the way he moved was too efficient. Controlled. He crossed the street without hesitation and entered another building. Malik noted the timing. He followed the same street the next day at 1:40 a.m. and saw a different man exit, dressed as a utility technician. Same precision, same direction, same pattern. It wasn't surveillance he was doing. It was decoding choreography. Malik realized this wasn't about one man anymore. It was a system, alive, rehearsed, engineered. He considered telling someone. The police? A journalist? But he knew what they'd see. A bus driver obsessed with shadows, sketchbooks filled with paranoid diagrams. They wouldn't believe him. So he stopped talking to people entirely. Instead, he mapped. He walked between alleys that smelled of ozone and rust, marking pressure plates disguised as puddles. He stood beside walls that vibrated faintly when you stood at the right angle. He began to sense the pulse of the city beneath its pavement. Then came the night when the bus lights flickered. It was brief, less than a second, but it hadn't happened in years. Malik's route was clean, mechanical. The system didn't glitch. That night, it happened again at the same intersection. The third time, he stopped the bus and stepped out. There was nothing unusual, just cracked asphalt and a flickering lamppost. But standing there, Malik noticed the faint sound of static, low and distant, like a detuned radio between stations. It wasn't coming from the city. It was coming from below. He crouched and placed his hand on the ground. Vibration, not from the road, from something beneath it. He began to walk the block in a spiral, stepping carefully, listening to the way the silence shifted. Eventually, he stood atop a manhole, older than the rest. It bore no utility markings, no metal ID tag, just a faint triangle etched into the rust. He photographed it, compared it to the others. It didn't match any known municipal designs. Back home, he laid the photo beside others he'd taken over the past few weeks. The triangle appeared in 7 of them, always in unregistered locations, always subtly present. It was the constant in a sea of noise. He remembered the Cold War manual. The triangle intersected by a line. In 6 of the 7 photos, the triangle was whole. But in one, it was marked with a diagonal slash, a new variant. That difference made him pause. He stared at it long into the night. What changed? Why only one? Then he saw it. The slash triangle was from a photo he took near a water treatment plant, a place abandoned for over a decade, a place outside his usual route. He returned the next night. The air near the plant was bitter with chemical memory. Chain-link fences sagged like collapsed lungs. He climbed over carefully, boots crunching dead leaves. The silence was absolute. In the distance, a door stood open. Not ajar. Open. Wide. Black. He approached step by step, every instinct in his spine firing off. Inside, the darkness didn't feel empty. It felt pressurized, like standing in the hollow of a lung about to inhale. He didn't enter. Not yet. Instead, he knelt and placed a small stone by the door. A marker. A choice. If he returned and the stone was gone, he'd know he wasn't alone. When he turned to leave, he noticed another triangle, this time carved directly into the dirt beside the foundation. It wasn't old. It had been left for him. The morning after the triangle in the dirt, Malik woke before the sky shifted. There was no hesitation. He dressed, layered for the cold, laced his boots with the precision of someone preparing for something more than walking. As he left, he paused at his door, just long enough to scan the hallway behind him. Quiet, as always. But now, quiet was no longer comfort. It was signal. The streets held an early hush. Lights flickered across wet asphalt, as if uncertain of their duty. He made no detours, no stops. The path was already decided. The city, it seemed, had been guiding him to this point all along. He arrived at the water treatment facility before sunrise. The door remained open. The stone he had left was gone. Not moved. Gone. He stepped through. The darkness inside didn't recede. It seemed to absorb. His flashlight barely sliced the space. Walls stretched farther than they should. The floor beneath him was concrete, damp, humming faintly. Not electricity, resonance. The kind of hum you feel in your ribs more than your ears. Corridors stretched like veins. Every turn revealed more stillness. Rusted valves, broken grates, ancient machinery, all staged as if abandoned long ago. But Malik saw the signs. Footprints in dust, recently disturbed debris, security cameras too modern to belong here. He moved deeper. Then he saw it. The first symbol, painted in pale gray. The triangle intersected, but this time inverted. Beneath it, 3 lines fanned outward like roots. A branch of the system, a direction, a message. He followed. At the end of the hall, a set of stairs spiraled down into a chamber he hadn't known existed. The air grew colder but sharper. Controlled. Filtered. Something was sustaining this place. The stairs opened into a circular room. Windowless. Silent. And at its center, a console. Not glowing. Not alive. But poised. The console was minimal. A screen, a slot, a keypad. On the floor beside it, a binder. Weathered but intact. Malik crouched, brushed dust from its cover, and opened it. Inside, maps. Not cities. Of networks. Subsurface layouts. Arterial diagrams. Nodes and pulses. And markings, many of which match his own notebook sketches. The binder detailed movements, exchange points, rest sites, and something labeled only as sleepers. He turned the page. Photographs. Faces. All black and white. All expressionless. One of them was the old man from his bus. Another was someone younger, the man who replaced him days later. And one was Malik himself. Not recent. An older photo. He was younger, maybe in his early 20s, dressed in civilian clothing, but standing in a place he didn't remember. A hallway. Tiled. Windowless. He froze. Memory offered no answer. No context. Just the image. Proof of something unseen, forgotten, or erased. The binder's final page held coordinates. One of them matched the location he now stood in. The others formed a circle. He sat for a long time on the cold floor. No alarm sounded. No door seal behind him. The system was silent, as if waiting. He took out his notebook and cross-referenced the coordinates. Every one matched a point he had suspected. A pattern, yes, but more than that, a rhythm. He thought back to the old man. The limp, the precision, the silence. They were all following something, serving something, but not like soldiers, more like guardians, carriers, keepers of whatever the structure was beneath the skin of the world. Malik closed the binder and looked at the console again. He placed his palm on the surface. Nothing moved, but he could feel it, the quiet acknowledgement of a circuit completed. The system recognized him, or had been waiting for him. He left the room the way he came, eyes adjusting again to the darkness. No fear now, only clarity. He didn't know what would happen next, whether this was recruitment, awakening, or inheritance. But he knew something crucial. Silence wasn't the absence of noise, it was where meaning waited. He emerged just as the sky turned silver. The streets still slept, the city unaware. At home, he opened his notebook to the first page and wrote only one line. Some people ride the system. Others are the system. Then he turned off the lights and waited.